One of the things I'm doing in this 85 Silverado is replacing the molding that goes down the side. So on this side, it's missing the piece that goes to the door. And on the other side, this one was also hanging off. The door was missing and a couple of the pieces along the back. I went ahead and replaced all the molding on the other side, and I'm going to replace it all on this side, which is what this video is about. I was going to buy the already cut pieces from LMC, but it's on back order. So I ended up just getting a big roll of it from Amazon. There's a link in the description. Now here is what's left of that roll. I have it rolled out on the floor, and believe me, you want to do this at least a week before you're going to start working on this. Roll it out, put some weights on either end. Now this is about half a roll because I've already done the other side. Needs to also be noted, there is a top and a bottom to this molding. You can't just flip it whichever way you want. It's probably hard to see, but that end there is a little bit taller than this end here. So it goes like this. While we're looking at this, see, we've only got 2 pieces of tape here. There's plenty of room for a third, and that's exactly what I do on each piece, is add a third. So I went ahead and got the good stuff, which is 3M, and pretty much like this. Here is a pile of items I use to do the other side, and I imagine I'll be using on this side as well, including that hammer over there. And of course rags, and even some more rags. The worst part of this job is getting the old tape off. For that, I used a combination of several different items, including some simple green, some isopropyl alcohol, some 3M specialty adhesive remover, razor blades, and then I also have these 2 different wheels here, made by different companies. I think this is a 3M product, and this one, I will tell you now, if you buy this one, works great. You probably want to buy 2 of them. I've probably gone through about half of this one, and I still have it in, half of a truck to go. So yeah, you might want to get 2. I'm using it sparingly. I've also used this one a little bit, but this one seemed to work better. Getting the old molding off, you might use these. I'll show you these, but you might want to try these, or you might end up using this like a plastic chisel, maybe just good old razor blades. For cutting the bulk roll of molding, definitely get this tool. Now this is the 2.5-inch jaw. You might want to get the 3.5-inch jaw instead. This works, but when you have to do some angle cuts, like this cut right here, an extra inch would be a lot nicer. The molding itself is 2-inch. This is 2.5, so it's just barely enough. If I had been thinking, I would have sprung for the 3.5-inch. Links to a whole bunch of this stuff will be in the description, so let's get going here. Real quick, resist the urge to take all the molding off and clean it all up at once. It is a whole lot easier to line up the new molding when you're just doing it one at a time instead of having to do the entire truck at one time. I'm sure there's measurements somewhere, but I don't have them. I'm not going to take them. I'm just going to replace one piece of molding at a time, so I don't have to worry about any of that. But I'll look and see if I can find those measurements and post them in this video somewhere. Just going to wipe the dirt off real quick. Depending on your finish, you probably don't want to use a metal razor blade. Yeah, it's on there pretty good. Yeah, it really shreds this thing. Close up what we're working with. And hit it with a little bit of the 3M adhesive remover. This stuff will also remove your paint, so now remember, this truck's clear coat is gone, so this is the base coat that's wiping out. And then a little bit of simple green. That's how it's done in a nutshell. It's a long way down the rest of this door. I'll be back when the door's clean. All the old adhesive is gone and the door is clean. Now we need to cut a piece of our bulk roll. To do that, I'll be using these. I'm not sure how obvious it is, but this is not straight. We have to cut this at a slight angle. Yes, I'm just kind of eyeballing that. This is why I said a 3.5 would be a little bit better than this 2.5. There isn't a whole lot to spare on this roll. This is much easier with 2 people. So you want to maintain about the gap that the rest of them have. And this is just to hold this end up. We can stretch this out. Go ahead and get this nice and flat. This is a straight cut here. A little long, but that's all right. Much better. Next up, I am going to grab my 3M tape and just run. Well, that finished that roll. Glad I got 2 rolls. If you're doing the same thing I'm doing, that means you're going to need 2 rolls as well. What worked best for me on the other side was to start all 3 of these. Alright. Just get those started. Get this where you had it. This is kind of why this is a 2-person job. Because you can think you have this all lined up. Alright, now that looks good. Now, we're just going to peel that back like that. Start peeling our tape. Then you're going to want to press it down really well. I'm putting tape at the ends. Now, I probably don't really need this tape because I left this lying on the ground so it's really flat. But if you haven't done that, the ends will curl, so you might want to put some tape on the end for a while. So now it's time to remove this piece here. The way this works is it's basically a piece of string between 2 handles, and you just get it behind the molding, and then just saw back and forth. Yeah, this should come off now. So what it did was saw right through the double-sided tape, and there's quite a bit left here. A lot of dirt. Start with a little bit of simple green. Get rid of that dirt. This is pretty thick and would wear that wheel down. You'll have to make this call on your own. You could try using like a plastic razor blade or something. This one's been a little beat up. I'm going to use an actual razor blade, but you have to make this call yourself on your own vehicle because this can scratch your paint, can gouge it. I don't really care on this vehicle because it's fine. It doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to get as much as I can off with the razor blade. That was actually my finger making all that noise. Alright, that's not so bad. Now we'll hit it with our wheel. You can see how wore down this is getting. It seems to work better if you go slower, but it also seems to tear it up more if you go slower. So I guess there's a trade-off there somewhere. We still have some residue left. We'll hit it with a 3M specialty adhesive remover. You might be asking, why don't you just use that the entire time? Well, if you buy some and try it, you'll find out why. Aside from kind of taking the paint with it, it seems to do much better when you get down to just kind of this residue. Otherwise, it just becomes a big gooey mess. It takes even longer to get it off, to get the gooey mess off. It probably varies from person to person. This seems to be what works the best for me. Now I'll get rid of that. It's a vicious cycle. That's dry. Bit of alcohol. Okay, so the piece I was showing you earlier, I had actually already cut for this. You go right here. I was talking about how it curves naturally because it comes in a big roll. Once we put this on, I'll definitely be putting a piece of tape on it. Now remember, you may not necessarily be lining it up with this. Your bed and your cab might be off a little from when it came from the factory. So these might not line up well, like they used to. So we're on to this one, and now if your molding hasn't fallen off on the side of the road and you've got the original piece, you can just line up the ends and just snip it to size. So I'm finally to the last one here, and you're gonna go through a bunch of string with this. It's a good thing it comes with quite a bit extra. Right before I got to the end. Pull it off. This has pretty much been the method I use for all of them. Again, if your paint is nice, you probably don't want to do this. Use something gentler than a razor blade. With some adhesive remover. Get the final last little bits. Some alcohol. Let that air dry. Got our old piece. Line that up. Get the angle. Also an angle on the back on this one. Looks good. You could try skipping this step if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it. I really think this molding needs it. You're going to want to tape this section really well. On the other side, this actually peeled back after a couple days. What I ended up doing was taking an old piece like this and putting it right here, and then used a big vice grip C-clamp like this to hold it in place, and I left it there overnight. That seemed to have taken care of the problem. If you do that though, make sure you don't put it on too tight or it will actually leave an indentation in the molding. Okay, it's actually going to be tomorrow when I take all this tape and stuff off here, but for you it'll be right now. Okay, let's get this tape off of here. And get the protective tape off of there as well. There's one more thing we have to do to each one of these, and that is use this pen. Gonna hit that a couple times. What we do with this pen is we seal this edge, and we're gonna do that on each piece. Let me get all this tape off of here, and then we'll get it out in the sunshine and take a look at it. Before we get it out in the sunshine, I did notice one other little problem. Yeah, this corner piece looks terrible compared to our new chrome trim. So we've got a couple options. One option, you take some metal polish, dip it in your rag a little bit there. Just buff this really well. Clean this metal up. Let that sit for a few. Alright, maybe get a buffing wheel. Buff that down really nicely. I think you can see the difference here. Here's where it wasn't buffed. Here's where it is buffed. I'll probably get a actual buffing wheel to buff this out. Or perhaps you're more of a McDonald's drive-through kind of guy instead of a nice sit-down restaurant. You like instant gratification. I've got something for you too. Alright, so forget the cream. Let's just get a paper towel and a nice can of WD-40. Spray it on the rag. And yeah, I'm even going to go over where I just cleaned it with a metal polish. And would you look at that? Now it matches. Your choice, really. Oh, this looks so much better. That's so nice to not have a big, huge gap on the door. Missing trim. And now there's trim on the tailgate again, where there wasn't before. This entire side now has trim. Looks fantastic. But why am I putting new trim on something that's got such a bad paint job? Well, be sure to like and subscribe and tune in for the next episode on this truck. I'll be using Poppy's Patina Clear Coat. I'm going to try and revive this dark blue paint and hopefully make it look like something other than this dull matte finish that it currently has. I'll see y'all down the road.